Perfect. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, beautiful people. Welcome to one more session of Smartlead's Office Hours. My name is Akash. I'm your customer success manager here at Smartlead. We do this every session. Drop on the comments where you're from and what the temperature is like in your city. We'd love to know. I'm from India and it's a comfortable 30 degrees Celsius. Tell me what's yours. Come on, guys, drop it on the chat. Where you're from and the temperature. What's the temperature like is in your place? There we go. 82 degrees. From Florida, 70, a comfortable one. Nice one, CJ. Two people out of 87. We'd love to see more, guys. Susan, Canada, 5 degrees.
And its base is Serbia. It's 10, 11 degrees. Can be better here, but not complaining. There's some sun out there.
Right. It's kind of cold and rainy in Cleveland. Wow. We see the count coming through. Also, a follow-up question, something we ask during every session. Drop on the comments if you're an agency, a freelancer, or a SaaS startup. We'd love to know because this could be really useful for you and for us. Come on, guys. Nobody wants to talk to me. There we go. Agencies. Wow, beautiful. There you go. We got a bunch of agencies today and a startup. Perfect. Deans from sales. Freelancer, agency. I see most of the crowd is our agencies today, but we also have sales teams and freelancers on the crowd. There you go. Sam's here. Perfect. But without further ado, let's kickstart. So today, the guest for today's event is Stan Stojanovic. He's the founder of frontbrick.io. And for those of y'all who are wondering what frontbrick is an AI-powered demand generation B2B agency. And Stan here has come prepared. He's going to talk to us about a lot of core and crucial stuff in terms of cold emailing, right? How to write cold emails, the basic one, how to have automated list building, AI first GTM strategy, and he's also going to talk to us about how you can turn interested replies into meeting books faster. And you might want to stick to the end of this because 10 free lucky winners gets free smart servers, and Stan's also going to give out 10 free clay templates, right? And this is for people who stay till the end. For the smart servers, drop a comment on the Slack post on the community and we'd pick 10 of y'all. Yeah. Without further ado, Stan, I'd hand over the mic to you, sir. Before you start, a quick round of introduction would be beautiful.
For sure. Thanks, Akash. Thanks, everyone, for joining. As Akash mentioned, my name is Stan. I'm based in Serbia in Europe. Founded frontBrick way back in 2020 as a consultancy. Worked in the different roles in SaaS and with SaaS companies, also with some agencies, over the years, and then transitioned the, let's say, more agency model a few years back. This is my first office hours with Smartlead, so thank you very much, Smartlead team, for inviting me. As Akash mentioned, I came somewhat prepared. I believe in a show, don't tell system, so I have like a mini presentation for a couple of things and a couple of talking points that we will be covering. And then after each section, I'd love to open up the floor for any questions, pretty much anything I'm happy to answer. And then at the end as well, we'll have more questions. And as Akash mentioned, I'm happy to give away some of these interesting clay templates that some of you might find beneficial as well.
Awesome.
That sound good?
All good, sir. Without further ado, probably people are waiting to see what we have. So let's kickstart.
Yeah, so the expectations seem high. So let's see what happens. I will share my screen just in a second here. All right. Just Akash, if you can confirm, I think everyone can see the screen.
Big and clear.
Cool.
Big and clear.
Perfect. So let me just skip through a few things here. Summary, we already talked about it. Just for some more context, we primarily focus on outbound, obviously. We do combine it with LinkedIn ads and a few other channels as well to complete the demand generation cycle, but basically outbound is the core offering of what we do. And it's a very boutique agency. We work primarily with B2B SaaS companies, some agencies in web design space, marketing agencies, and so on. So yeah, that's a small but compact team, I would say. Now, in terms of what we will be talking about, Akash mentioned right now, but basically what I wanted to touch base on first is writing cold emails on a one-on-one personalized basis using a few different tools like Clay, Twain, and obviously Smartlead. So we're going to talk about why this is important. I'm going to show you an example of how the workflow is built for us and why I think it works. Then we'll talk about automated list building. I do have one workflow as an overview here, but there's more that I can give out at the end. Basically, it's automating A to Z from sourcing the leads, enriching the data, writing the copy, and then sending to Smartlead. We'll talk about making outbound a part of your larger GTM strategy, combining LinkedIn ads and outbound in the same workflow, and why that matters in terms of getting replies. And then finally, before Q&A, we'll talk about just a simple trick that is not science, but how to turn interested reply into meeting faster, and basically just, how to build a workflow to build trust a little bit quicker. That had a very positive impact for us and our clients.
Beautiful.
All right. So any questions you have as well? I think I can see the chat here, but Akash, if there's anything, just let me know, please.
Absolutely.
Speaking about one-on-one personalized emails and why it matters, like obviously, if we talk about this, it's in ideal world, every prospect gets a very tailored email to, their ICP, what they do, their problems, solutions, and so on. But there's another problem that this solves, and it kind of works in conjunction with smart servers altogether to form a very strong platform for deliverability. So the way this works is when you use Spintax, for example, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you can bypass some of the ESPs and your deliverability becomes better. But when you use a tool, for example, like Twain, to write these unique emails to each person that is receiving the email based on the input, that means that you have a better chance of landing in inbox. When you combine that with smart servers and you have a decent infrastructure in place, which is diversified, you have a far better chance of not just landing in inbox, but getting more positive replies, getting more meetings, and so on.
Right.
Cool. So I'll show you how that works. Let's see if this interactive demo works here. So basically, the way I think about good email copy for us and for every single client, and again, this is nothing new, but ideally it has to be trigger-based. Like, if there's just a general list, it's very tough to write copy that will convert. Yes, you can have a strong offer, and that will help. But if you are relevant, I think you have a far better chance to write high quality copy that will be relevant to the person and not just personalized. So when you have a trigger, let's say whether it's a funded company, although this is a bit saturated trigger, or a new decision maker change the role, or anything like social signal, like any signal that you have, if you have a list like that, that will help you write the copy. So that's the first step.
Right.
Now, another very important input for this type of personalization, I would say, is if you have good data, that means that you have a great platform to write relevant emails using AI. If you have bad data and you don't have enough data points on prospects and company, then that's a situation where AI won't really help you with that. So what we do here, we just enrich people using LinkedIn. So we scrape their LinkedIn profiles using Clay, and we get a lot of interesting data here. One other thing that we do, this is one of the favorite features in Smartlead, is because we target multiple locations in many cases, we send emails on we find the time zone of the lead, and then every lead receives the email in their own time zone. That way we don't have to create multiple campaigns, so everything sticks with one campaign.
Right.
Summarizing their LinkedIn profiles helps us. I'm going to explain you why in the next step. But basically, when we scrape the LinkedIn profile, we have like a 4-sentence summary of what they do, what they care about, and basically what is their core day-to-day job. This is where we come to actually crafting emails. So the way this works here is, I'm not sure if some of you have used the integration here, but basically when you feed enough data, like why you're reaching out, and you feed that data from Clay, you have your enriched LinkedIn profile here, you have the title of the person, you have a lot of data points, as I mentioned before. That will really help you write emails that are AI generated, but they don't sound robotic, right? So if you take a look at this email, for example, you have all the elements. You have the trigger, you have the value proposition, you have the social proof, you have a very brief explanation of the approach, and then you have like a very low risk call to action with some personalization point at the end that will help you get a reply. Because the goal of a cold email is not to sell anything, it's to get a reply, to engage with people, start building relationships, and approach like this usually works for us. As you can see, Robert here received the same email, but it's a little bit different. That's why, again, this type of unique emails in combination, again, with smart servers and the infrastructure that you can build in Smartlead will actually help you, really stay on top of everything and actually land in that primary inbox. Then we have a second email, for example, which looks like this, with, again, another PS line, very low friction call to action here. Right. By the way, I'll be sharing recording, so you'll have a chance to read these emails anyway. I'm just kind of skimming through right now. This one, for example, again, adds more value here. We typically have 3 to 4 step sequences. This one basically just offers interactive demo like this to show them how everything works. And then the last one, which is like a free cold email generator, again, another soft breakup or value, because when you do something like this, you're not closing the door, you're walking away, and people are generally inclined to reply to you. Correct. All right, obviously, when that's done, using the API, you send these leads with drafted copy to Smartlead, and then what happens, again, your reply rate goes usually from 1% to 2% to 4%, 5%, 7%, and so on, depending on how good of a framework you pick, because there is a possibility to customize these frameworks based on your style of writing. Great. I'm gonna make a pause here for a round of questions. Use chat or I don't know if anyone wants to unmute themselves.
Drop it in the chat and I'll pick it up. And at the end of the session, we also have an AMA, so they can unmute themselves and directly ask the questions. But Stan, I had something, right? So I did see you have a 4-step campaign. Is that something that you recommend other users? Because I see people varying from 3 to 5, some people to 6. What is your strategy on that?
I'm sorry, are you referring to steps in the sequence?
A number of steps in your campaign, yes. So I did see at this point when you showed it was a 4-step campaign. Would that be a recommendation that we can take from you?
Well, we never exceed 3 to 4. 4 steps is the maximum we go with email. We used to have much longer sequences before, but I feel like if you span these emails over a few days, 3 to 4 emails should be sufficient to see if somebody is actually reacting or not. Anything beyond that point, you're just risking of being flagged as spam and being an annoying person, even though you try to add more value with every email. So I would recommend keep it to 4 steps. Right. And then maybe combine LinkedIn if you can in the same flow. We'll talk about it later, but basically in terms of email, I wouldn't exceed 4 steps.
Got it. And I'm picking one question from Tanya on the chat. So if these are automated emails, then how do we stop the sequence when someone replies? It automatically gets stopped. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stan.
Yeah. It does. It's the same. It's the same as you would write the copy in Smartlead. Some of the replies, the sequence gets stopped right away.
Perfect. And Gerardo has one. Could you share some tips on prompting in Twain? I always get super robotic responses.
Yeah. It really depends on one thing. I have a Twain account, so it's a little bit different here. But basically, when you connect your API key here, you don't have to go by pre-built sequences. You select custom sequence ID, and inside in their desktop app, you can build a sequence using your own style. So let's say you have a preferred style of emails. When you paste it in, Twain will pick it up, and it will actually save the framework, like the structure of the email. Mm-hmm. You paste it here, and then in terms of prompting, again, if you have data that is good enough, that's usually a winning combination here. what I have in this case is just a job title, name of the person, their industry, which I used AI to basically pinpoint specific vertical.
Right.
And then funding type. Then trigger has to articulate very clearly why you're reaching out and what are you offering, not just why. In this case, I do want to offer them some upfront value. And this is the reason why I'm reaching out, because they just raised funding round. Then sequence instructions is where you want to, let's say, prompt it a little bit more. Basically, you have to give it very clear instructions, like email 1, I only want you to use a CTA like this. And then in email 2, always use a CTA like this. So any instructions you put in here, it's going to pick it up and it's going to respect it 95% of the time.
Perfect.
Have the company name, send their information here. Then the problems and the solutions are very important. That ties back into your ICP, competitive advantage, social proof, and that's pretty much it. So I hope that answers the question, but basically building a custom sequence in Twain, injecting that here, and then feeding the data that you have from Clay here should be sufficient to get
Awesome.
decent output.
Awesome. Picking one from Michael, is there a way to separate these personalized email sequences from other larger broad-based outreach?
I don't think I fully understand the question. So what do you mean by...
Yeah, even so, Michael, when you say separate these personalized email sequences from other broader based outreach, where are you talking about? Are you talking about the platform that you're using, or could you give us more clarity on that? And in the meanwhile, I'll go to the next question from Robin. How large are the audience you send your campaigns to? Do you send on a daily basis, Stan?
That's a great question. Volume is very important with outbound, but not if it's a spray and pray method. So I would say for testing purposes, if you have 1,000 prospects in a sequence, you should at least get, the way I see that, and to my standard, you should at least see 10 positive replies. So 1 on each 100 replies. And then if it works, you can scale it out. The issue you will run into is how you can segment the lists to keep it relevant. So you only have a handful of founded companies in the last few months, so you can't really scrape thousands of companies. Maybe yes, but depending on the industry, it's really individual. Like I always go for a more targeted approach than just like volume. I don't think the volume just by volume works. It has to be relevant, and the more triggers or intent signals you can think of, the more robust list you can build, but you have to segment it by these triggers.
Got it. And one from Adam here. Can you elaborate on the personalization and what data and the sort of data is used for the personalization? So apart from the basic ones, Stan, are there anything specific you go for in your email copies?
So when it comes to this specifically here, if I come back to one of these slides here, let me just see which one. I think it's this one. So this is a very basic one, by the way, because this uses enrichment plugin from enrichment from Clay. So it pulls all the information they have on their LinkedIn. Usually that's sufficient because you have a follow-up prompt here in, because you have a follow-up prompt which basically allows you to summarize their LinkedIn profile. And I can share the prompt later as well. When I share the template, you'll see it anyway. Basically, it takes the most important stuff from the LinkedIn, and then it gives you like what they do, what are their challenges, what is their day-to-day job. And when you feed that information into something like this, it's going to pick it up and it's going to allow you to stay relevant. Other than that, anything that's connected to trigger, in this case, funding, is very important to keep it relevant.
Awesome. And before we move on to the next one, one question from Tanya. A problem I have encountered with adding LinkedIn bios is that sometimes it's outdated. Any other method to personalize it?
Yes, but this doesn't pick up just the bio. It takes the current experience, the education, previous experience, summary section, posts, anything that you have. It basically takes all the information and kind of summarizes everything for you. Depending on the industry you're in, sometimes it can be outdated, but for this kind of, let's say, B2B SaaS, B2B software, most of the people have it up to date. So if your audience isn't on LinkedIn, then this probably isn't a good idea. Maybe you should look into something different. But this approach should work quite well for anyone that is at least somewhat active on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And Michael has also got back to us. So he said he's running larger cold email campaigns, and he doesn't want the prospects to be in the same two campaigns at the same time, right? So I think, Michael, you have an option for this at Smartlead, right? So you have something called general preferences every time you start a campaign. So if you do not want the leads to be a part of one other campaign, you can simply enable that. So when you enable that, it makes sure one lead stays only to one campaign, stays limited to one campaign, and not to two campaigns at the same time.
So essentially, you can disallow this. So it's not going to allow duplicate leads from here, and you can do it in-app in Smartlead as well. By I think automatically it's not going to allow you to add duplicate leads until you enable that.
True. But over to you, Stan. You can go for it.
All right, let's continue with this. Let me just move the chat over. All right, let's talk about automated list building. It cannot be automated for every single use case, but there's at least 10 use cases where you can automate everything A to Z. So I'm going to use the same method to show you. Like, this saves probably 5 hours weekly to our team when we build this workflow. And the funny fact is, we can sometimes reuse it. I'm not saying like we're using the same leads over and over, but if you have clients that have the same ICP, but they're in a completely different industries, you can, of course, use it because it's a different offer. They offer different services and so on. But basically, this combines a few different things here. It looks a little bit technical, but it's actually pretty easy to set up. So, tool called N8N, I'm sure some of you know about it, actually has a template that I can share later on that allows you to scrape Crunchbase data. I'm talking about funded companies right now, again, because this is the use case we're talking about. So the way this works is it has a schedule every day at the same time. It runs a scraper and it pulls all the companies that raise Series A, Series B, and seed round in this case, because this is our ICP. So every day, instead of someone from our team going on to Crunchbase and getting the data and then exporting the CSV and going through all that pain, this scraper does that all every single day. And then this is a little bit small, but basically it sends the data into Clay. And then when we get the data into Clay, then we can find our ICP within there. So if we run a search, let's say we want to target founders of SaaS startups, when we find these people, they end up in a list like this. Then inside Clay, we can find their work emails. We can use AI to kind of enrich the list. As you can see here, for example, we also use another prompt to basically pinpoint the industry. Like, saying we're working with B2B SaaS companies isn't sufficient, but if you say we work with SaaS companies in the food and beverage sector, that adds additional relevance to your emails, and that's why we do something like this.
Right.
This is the table that I showed you. I think I'm showing the same table here. This basically, again, we draft these emails to every single prospect. This is a little bit different workflow in terms of or framework that we use for email, but the output is the same. And then that gets sent again to Smartlead. So the value in this approach is, once you set up this, you invest 2 or 3 hours to set it up. It runs by itself every single day. So every single day you get new leads in your campaign. Every lead gets personalized email, and you don't have to do anything except manage inbox and connect with them on LinkedIn and make sure you convert them into meetings.
Wow.
This is just one workflow. The same can be done for new hires, job changes, people researching specific category. Like, for example, I'm sure a lot of you use Apollo, so you have these intent signals there, for example. All of these workflows can be set up. It's almost like an autonomous workflow that works by itself, and then you just have to kind of make sure to know how to operate it properly. So I'm going to be sharing these templates in the end of the Clay table, and I'm going to be explaining how what you need to do with the scraper beforehand to kind of get the data in. But with a template, you should be able to set it up in like 7 minutes. Cool. Again, questions. I made it a little bit shorter, so we have enough time for everything.
Right. One question was your feedback for Clay, if you have any, Stan.
Well, feedback for Clay, I never seen a person that said they can benefit from it. It is a little bit technical tool, has a learning curve, but once you really understand how it works, it is a time saver and something that helps scale campaigns. One thing I would like to emphasize is it doesn't, like, all the tools are great, but if you don't know what you want to do and if you don't think logically about things, none of the tools will help you. But if you actually know what you want to build, then if you combine Smartlead with Clay and Twain in this case, you can really build something great, like, for example, that I showed you before.
Awesome. Clay or Apollo or Zoom Info? How accurate for accurate industry data?
So to put it this way, Apollo and Zoom Info are great products, both of them. We personally use Apollo in-house. It's one issue with that is it's a database. There's a limited number of people there. And if everyone receives cold emails from the same database, that's why all of them are overloaded. Clay isn't a database. Clay is like spreadsheets on steroids that allows you to integrate with more than 100 apps and to pull the data from different sources that you find the data that doesn't exist in Zoom Info or Apollo. So if you scrape the data from, let's say, anywhere from the internet, let's say you want to scrape reviews on Trustpilot. When you bring that data into Clay and find people using Clay, you can't find that data on Apollo likely or Zoom Info. That's where the value of Clay is. So I would say ideally you use them together, Apollo or Zoom Info and Clay, and that's a winning combination.
Awesome. And I'm just responding to one person who's asking if tracking links would hurt your deliverability or adding any HTML would hurt your deliverability. What are your thoughts, Stan?
Yes. Like ideally you want to send plain text emails without any HTML. Do not track opens, do not track clicks. That's the best practice, definitely. At some point, like if you're doing a little bit more targeted approach and lower volume, you've seen that in some cases I had links here, but only in follow-ups. I do think that people are still visual. They believe in something they see. So if you're doing a little bit lower volume for some targeted campaigns, you can get away with it, but only use it in follow-ups. Because if you land an inbox first time, and you're already there and you're following up in the same thread, it's a better possibility that the second email won't land in inbox. But again, don't overlink things, don't use any graphics or videos or something like that. I don't think that one link occasionally hurts deliverability that much. Although, like, ideally, like if you can send plain emails with just text, by all means do that. That's going to help you with deliverability. But again, don't forget that you have to stand out somehow as well.
Awesome. One from Richard. Twain is great, but a bit on the pricey side. Can you not replace that content creation with Clay and a standard LLM, probably GPT or Gemini, etc.?
Maybe yes. If you train it properly and you're really good at prompting, you could technically do that. But I've tested both approaches, and for us, Twain just worked better. I think because just it's trained on the model already, and you have a structure that you can pre-build and then inject basically like a pre-trained model already, and it saves a lot of time. Like you would have to invest a lot of time into training any LLM model to really not hallucinate, because out of 5,000 emails, Twain will maybe hallucinate in like one of the emails. All of them will work quite well, from at least from our experience. But you could, by all means. It would probably take a bit more time to train it.
Got it. And one question for Adam: How complex is building? Clay. How complex is it setting up Clay and Twine in its smart leads? Stan, because his question was, does he have to go to a consultant to set it up, or is it something that he can do by himself?
If you have time to kind of sit down and kind of watch a bunch of videos and do it yourself, you could build it. That's how I learned it, like a while back. I'm self-taught, like I didn't have any training on that. But if you wanna move quickly, a consultant, like in terms of one-time setup, might help you set up some of the systems. And I've had a lot of clients that actually wanted us to set up a system for them so they can bring it in-house and then manage it on their own. Like a flow like this, for example, automated flow. Usually companies will want something like that set up, and then they can manage it in-house and maybe some sort of workshops or trainings. But if you have some time to learn it, it wouldn't hurt. Like you're gonna just learn another great thing and set it up on your own end of the day.
Awesome. But that's all we have, Stan. You can go ahead.
Okay, excellent. Let's talk about one more play here. when I was in a few, like a lot of people will see Outbound as a sales channel. Partially that's right, but I think it's a marketing channel. You're still marketing to these people. You're just doing it the other way around. And a lot of marketing leaders, when I hosted some workshops in person, I asked them, like, we had a topic like, what is the low cost, high impact marketing channel that you can think of? All of them were saying like webinars, content, this and that. But then I had a question like, how do you invite these people to webinars? It was like, oh, we use email marketing. Well, good morning. That's also sort of outreach or outbound, right? It's just not direct response. So a lot of these teams, what I've seen, are actually struggling to create a strategy that will allow them to combine inbound and outbound in some form. And the kind of channels are completely detached, and it's very hard to measure their overall return on investment when you split that by channels like black and white. It doesn't work like that. Like somebody can see you on LinkedIn, then get an email, and they get a connection request on LinkedIn, and God knows where they saw you first. Like they converted in the end. So that's why we build the systems where we combine, in this case, LinkedIn ads and cold email, or in this case, warm email,
Right.
to really maximize on reply rates. The way it usually works, I don't know if you've heard of, and you probably have seen this on LinkedIn, thought leader ads. There are ads that are ran from a personal profile as opposed to company profile, because people connect with people, they trust people, they buy from people. So when you build a targeted list of accounts or prospects, and you have 10,000 prospects or 5,000 prospects in your campaign, or you want to market to them for account-based purposes, you upload the list to LinkedIn, and basically LinkedIn will match that to about 80% of people, right? When you push the ads like this with high quality content that your ICP cares about through ads, people will start engaging with your content.
Right.
But there's going to be a lot of people who see your ads and they're aware that you're there, but they don't engage with you. So one thing that we use, this is a tool called Fibler or Fibler. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Basically, what this allows you to do is to see who actually saw your ads, not just who clicked. So as you can see here, we have a threshold of minimum of 10 impressions. So if a person saw one of our ads at least 10 times, it's going to send that into a campaign here,
Right.
or into clay table here, essentially. That's going to turn to a campaign. So we can see that some of the companies have seen ads 88 times, 510 times. Imagine if somebody saw your ad in your face on LinkedIn 88 times. What's going to happen when you email them? So basically, you have companies that are aware that you exist. They consume your content every single day for a number of weeks.
Right.
And then you enrich these companies to get more information about them. You find work emails using Clay in a waterfall, using multiple providers. And sorry, I think I skipped one of these. So when you do that, of course, when you get these emails, you send that over to Smartlead. So the way it works is somebody saw your ads multiple times, you enrich the information, you find the work email, and you send them into a Smartlead campaign. Of course, you don't mention you saw my ad, but you just read it as a regular prospect in your sequence, and you align your copy with the content that you're feeding them in your LinkedIn ads. So what happens, people are usually becoming very, very interested. And then inside Smartlead, you can use a webhook to send the data back to interested leads, basically to send them back to people who reply. In this case, you can send them back to a clay table, and then you can use AI to score how good of a fit they are in terms of your ICP. Right. So I have a prompt for that, which will basically say, okay, this is our ICP. On a scale of 1 to 10, grade how good of a fit they are for us. When you do that, if the company has an existing sales team, you can route these qualified leads, so 8+ or 7+ in this case, directly in Slack. So they get a real-time notification about the lead and all the information about them. And then depending on the CRM you use, this is just a Notion one, like a CRM inside Notion. You can create records inside CRM. So you build like a system that combines ads that you're running, LinkedIn ads in this case, to prospects that you want to target. They see your ads, they engage with your ads, you send them to warm outreach campaigns, they reply to your messages. That's what bumps reply rate up. And then you basically route these leads to your SDR sales team, send it to CRM, whether it's HubSpot, Salesforce, Notion, Airtable, whatever you use. And that's how you basically combine two flows in a single workflow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it does. And this allows them to take action immediately, right? So hence the interested replies faster. Fair enough. Makes a lot of sense, Stan.
Cool. Another round of questions.
Yep. Looking into the chats. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Yep. Adam has one. Smart lead question. What steps should I take for my clients to keep their open rates high and their domains emails performing well? I'm being told by a consultant that I should be using monthly services aside from smart leads to keep things clean, deliverability management for your client. So ideally, Adam, in terms of infrastructure, 2 to 3 mailboxes per domain. This is simply to keep the damage less. Start slow. Ideally start with 15 to 20 emails. I know people are sending up to 30, 40, some people even 50. But when you start slow, gradually increase, see consistent results and scale by 5 or 10. Right. And make sure when you're starting, you're reaching out only to verified leads. At least in the beginning, you can avoid catch all for a bit. When you start, only verified leads, and make sure your copies are dynamic. Because when you send out static copies, your copies can get burned pretty fast. Right. And on top of this, just to make sure everything is in place, don't track opens and clicks, at least not on the first email, because based on personal experiments as well, when we have tracking links, the email tends to go to spam. So when you have too many links is what I mean, right? So avoid that. And just to make sure everything is running fine with your infrastructure, you can also run a smart delivery test. This is going to tell you what percentage of your emails are going to your inbox and what percentage is going to spam. So this gives you an idea. Even if something goes bad, you get an idea as to where you need to look for. But if all this is in place, and warm-ups when you start, right? So if all this is in place, you should not be having any problems. I hope that made sense. Yes, Ashan, what Stan was showing was clear.
Like,
is there a percentage on people that replies being contacted for seeing the ad, Stan, from what you've seen?
the percentage is definitely higher than just a simple cold email campaign, just because, again, you build some trust, they see in your face. It's a bit hard to talk about concrete numbers because we run this for our clients and for us as well. So every industry is a little bit different, but technically speaking, it is a process that works quite good. Usually when we onboard a client, we'll start LinkedIn ads campaign right away. By the time we warm up domains and emails in 3 to 4 weeks and go through the ICP and set up all the campaigns for email, we'll already have a bunch of leads that interacted or saw ads, and we run campaigns then. So already from second month, they see a significant impact in terms of the pipeline.
Awesome. And picking one from Madhukesh, Stan, I currently send individual emails, but it usually takes 7 to 8 follow-ups just to get a client on a meeting. Attaching a document or including a link often risks the email landing in spam folder. I'm targeting mid-cap and large-cap companies, and reaching C-level decision makers is both time-consuming and challenging. Despite the emails being seen, most of the time I don't even get a response. Do you have any ideas or solutions to break through this?
That is a good question, and congratulations on a lot of manual effort. I do think it's important to start prospecting manually so you can understand how everything works before you scale automated campaigns. A lot of people will skip this. If you're targeting larger companies, my suggestion is to try and map these accounts, find at least like 2 decision makers and maybe 2 champions. And there is a way to do it in an automated way, but if you're already doing it manual, start by just calling out their names in a sense, like, hey, Akash, I wasn't sure whether you or your colleague Swapnil would be more relevant for something like this. And then you can continue with your email. In addition to that, depending on what type of copy you're using, try to make it like very low friction, especially going after C-level or busy people. Don't ask for a meeting right away. That's my advice. Try to offer some value first, and we'll talk about this in the end, rather than just leading by, imagine you're reaching out to a CEO of a company or a CMO, like they get 50 to 100 requests for meeting every single day from people they don't trust. But if your email stands out and offers something that is really valuable to them, make your goal to get a reply, not to get a meeting. And then when you get a positive reply, make your strategy how to convert that into a meeting. So the goal of a cold email is to get a reply, not to book a meeting right off the bat.
Awesome. What are your thoughts on adding cold calling to these emails? And we had similar questions on this time, right? So people are asking, do you also include cold calls in your campaigns, or how is it?
Great question. That's a matter of preference. I still think cold calling works. I'm not the best in cold calling myself. I'm just not that type of person. But definitely, if you have resources to do that, I would definitely do that. Not just to every prospect, but to prospect who reply and kind of show some sort of interest. Definitely, that's more like a warm calling. One thing that we've been using is there's an AI tool that allows us to basically leave dynamic voicemails to prospects. So whenever there's somebody who replies with interest and they don't get on a meeting right away, or they're still out there, we use this auto voicemail solution to basically um, give a nudge to them that we're still out there, and that usually at some point will work. But again, if you have resources, yeah, it's definitely something that could help you get better results.
Got it. What is a good ad spend for LinkedIn to get, say, 100 and have 50,000 contacts, 100 leads and have 50,000 contacts?
That is a great question, and it very much depends on a target audience you wanna go after. I'm going to give you an example. Like with this approach, we normally test it out with just 2,000 ad spend because we combine this in the same flow. We build the list in house that is very targeted. We don't build it on LinkedIn. We upload the list and we market to people we want to market to. So with around 2K ad spend, we actually see some traction, and then email helps us get it over the edge. That's why this approach allows you to lower the cost per lead while helping you with the velocity of leads. If you only spend 2,000 on LinkedIn ads without approach like this, I'm not sure if something would happen. So our cost per lead usually comes down to $19 on average with the approach like this. So 19.
Awesome. One from Daniel. Could you have completely different copies in one clay table, or do you set up different ones for that?
In terms of the copy, if you're using Twain, you have one framework that you follow, and basically that's how it works. You could technically add different Twain columns and then have different frameworks and then create a completely different copy. So the simple answer is yes, but we normally don't do that. We test one copy at a time and then we move forward.
Awesome. One from Corey. Are there different cold email standards known to be successful for offering/audience that are more blue collar? For example, roofing, commercial cleaning, etc.
Um, Another good question. I think a lot of these companies, that's where cold calling could actually be very beneficial. A lot of these people are very busy. And historically, to be quite transparent, I haven't seen cold email work as well as for some other industries for these types of services. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's just the results were slightly different compared to some other industries that are more, let's say, technology sector or like marketing people and so on. But yeah, it's very hard to say. I don't have a clear answer to that, but I do think that for example, cold calling could work maybe a little bit better for that kind of industry.
Awesome. And Stan, you mentioned this, but just to reiterate, do you suggest the AI calling and SMS or only LinkedIn and emails?
If you have capacity, not AI calling, but AI voicemails, I'm still not very confident to delegate calling to AI. Like if you have resources to implement all of that, yes. If you don't have resources to implement all of that, focus on what you think will work better to maximize on impact. Like we don't have resources to do cold calling in-house, so we just focus on LinkedIn and email, and we try to master that.
Perfect. But that's all we had. Just going through it once again. But yeah, we're good to go, Stan.
Cool. Excellent. This is a very simple hack. Like a lot of people will get, like, as I said, the goal of your email is to get a reply. But how do you get them on a meeting faster? So the ratio of people that will go on a meeting, depending on, again, the target audience, ideally, if you can aim for like 50 to 60% of people that reply positively, so you can convert about 50 to 60% of them into actual meetings, I think you are in a good spot. We use a very simple hack for something like that. It's nothing special, but what we do when we have a campaign on Smartlead and we get an interested reply, we use Smartlead's webhook integration to send the data back to Clay. So we add the webhook to Clay. This just explains how to set it up. You pick the lead category, so you only want interested leads and people who are labeled as interested inside Smartlead. And then basically when this webhook comes through, you get a reply, you get everything that you need. And basically what happens, you send this to a LinkedIn automation tool. We use HeyReach for this. Why we do this is, imagine receiving an email, some of the replies, and 2 minutes after they receive a LinkedIn connection request from you, you put your face behind your email and you instantly start building some trust with them. Funny enough, that helped us increase number of meetings booked from interested replies from 30 to 40% to about 50 to 60%. Just like very simple hack, and we implement this for all of our clients. Technically, it could look like this. This is a different campaign, but a lot of people will accept you because it's a familiar face, and a lot of people will actually reply you there if you give them just a nudge, like, "Hey, this is Stan. I just sent you an email about this. Just wanted to connect here as well." Like a very soft thing, nothing pushy, nothing salesy. People usually react very well to that. Let's do another round of quick questions.
So, taking a step back, Joel had a question. Stan, it is regarding the voicemail, right? So you did mention you're sending voicemails here and there. So how do you do it? Do you use AI for that?
There's a few solutions we tested. I have to check which one in the end we picked, but there is a tool that actually does that on an automated way. So it dials the number, but it doesn't connect. It goes directly into voicemail and leaves a voicemail. So you can pre-record a voicemail basically and just leaves the voicemail. I can send some information on that later on as well in a let's say recap email. But there are, like, if you type in like AI voicemail software, you'll see at least 10 of these. So, and you can test most of them, like work on a very similar pattern.
Awesome. And Tanya has come again. I think you missed my question earlier. I see a lot of tools, particularly Clay, which can get expensive. What KPIs do you track? How do we show impact to the leadership?
Tanya, that's a great question. To me, KPI is the revenue and the actual pipeline. Everything else to me is a vanity metric. There's leading indicators and there's lagging indicators, to put it that way. From a standpoint of cold emails, we only track reply rate and a positive reply rate. We don't track opens, we don't track clicks. We only track number of people who reply and number of people who show interest, and the number of meetings booked, and how does that translate into actual pipeline. So we usually build dashboards that actually monitor revenue. So they pull the data from CRM, because we sync all these leads into CRM. And then we pull the data on actual revenue, pipeline velocity. It's the number of meetings booked multiplied by average deal size. That's one metric that we track. So the velocity of pipeline, and then ultimately deals close we don't have control over that. But I think with proper targeting and messaging, we can have impact on the quality of leads. And if it's a decent sales team, people usually close deals, and they actually generate impact. So these are the metrics that we track.
Awesome. I hope that answered your question, Tanya. Joey has a question. We use Closely and Galaxy. Do you prefer Hey? I'm not sure if I got the question.
Probably HeyReach. Galaxy is another tool. To be quite frank, all good tools, all great tools, very similar into structure. The reason why we use HeyReach is because it natively integrates with Clay. It was the first integration they built, and we built the workflow around it. And it consistently showed better performance, at least for us and our clients. It allowed us to add custom variables in LinkedIn messages and not be limited to just first name and company name. So we can actually create tailored messages to every single prospect. That's the reason why we prefer HeyReach.
Awesome. And can Clay be used as a CRM as well to move leads into deals?
Not exactly. It's more like a middleman. So basically it can score your leads, but you should have a proper CRM to keep the record of these leads. So you can use different solutions. HubSpot, for example, has a free option. So I recommend taking HubSpot, and they integrate natively with Clay as well. So you can send all these enriched leads and scored leads to your CRM.
Salome has a question. So in terms of best practices for Smart Center accounts, So I shared an article on top because each of these providers have their own recommendations, right? For example, Inbox Automate, who's a Google provider, they have their own recommendations. So each of them would have their own. So you can maybe test it out to see if it's actually working, and it would, right? And even if it doesn't, we can still go back to them. So that's why we recommend that. But on a whole, generally, we recommend a 14-day warm-up cycle, 20 to 30 emails to start with, have daily ramp up, don't start shooting 20 to 30, slowly, gradually increase, and have the randomization in place as well, and you should do good. Your thoughts on including personalized video outreach? Do you prefer that, Stan?
Another good question. I used a solution called pitchlane.com or .io, I can remember a while back. It is a very decent way, but I think people figure out it's automated video and we stopped using it, and we couldn't really scale it the way we wanted with email. So we don't use it at this time. Although I'm not saying it cannot work. Like if you can maybe use it on LinkedIn, it might work a little bit better, but I wouldn't like, I don't think people figure out like if it's like, every single solution can record a website and say like, oh, I was on a website today. They don't even mention your name, or if they do, it's kind of clunky AI. So I don't think it's there quite yet from my perspective.
Awesome. How do I ensure I never run out of data for a particular niche, since there is only X amount of companies in a niche?
It is what it is. You sooner or later you will run out of data, no matter how big your market is. But then you should take more like account-based approach. If the market is smaller, then maybe the approach with LinkedIn ads and email and connecting with people on LinkedIn can actually work a little bit better for you. So just be a little bit smarter and reduce the volume of people you contact every single day. So do a little bit slower pace, but sooner or later you will run out of companies. And it's okay to contact some of these companies multiple times over the period of 1 year, 2 years. Some people don't even remember they got an email for you.
Awesome. But those are all the questions, Stan. I think we can go ahead.
Cool. I'll wrap up this so we have a few more moments for any additional questions, but I just wanted to kind of come back to the methodology, the strategy, how we think about the copy in general. I don't know if any of you is familiar with this, but this is very famous, let's say, in the space we are. Basically, when you take a look at your total addressable market, 3 to 5% of people are in a real distress and are actively looking to solve a problem. They have a real problem, and it's not always easy to get to these people, right? But you can use some triggers. About 15% of them are a little bit concerned with the solution, but they aren't kind of, there yet to make a decision, buying decision. Huge percentage is very neutral. They want to learn more, but they don't want to take any action right now. And about 20% of them are completely happy. So if I just picked Smartlead and somebody reaches out for me to change a solution, I'm not going to do that right now. So I'm not going to do it ever, but I'm going to do it right now anyway. So what that means for outbound is if you heard of Josh Brown, there is a very good analogy he uses. It's called deposit before you withdraw. So if you lead your messaging with just let's get on a meeting to every single person, remember that there's only 3% of people that are actually maybe ready to get on a meeting right now. So reconsider, take a step back, detach from the outcome in a sense of I have to book that many meetings. Yes, but think of your copy and angle in a strategic way where you lead with value, develop some really great lead magnets, and try to offer some actionable value before you ask them for their time. That's number one. Number two is whenever possible, use a trigger-based or intent-based outbound that is a trend right now, but it is true. Like the more intent signals you can think of, like what is a relevant trigger? What happens within the company that will trigger them to be in that top 3%? Try to kind of find out about it. You maybe use AI, maybe use GPT to ask for a few advices. It's going to give you some good output, and then use that to build your lists. And then this is going to sound like a cliche, but build relationships. Realistically, not every prospect is going to get on a meeting right now. So that's fine. Just connect with them on LinkedIn. Try to be consistent with some content there. Feed them with great content every single day. And that 2mm shift will actually allow you to shift from short-term to long-term pipeline. This isn't like overnight thing. Like you send a message, you get a meeting. Yes, at some point, but not for all prospects. So you should think long-term, especially if your addressable market is a little bit, let's say, lower or smaller.
Yes.
And I don't know how much time we have. right on time, but I'm happy to answer any additional questions if any. I don't know, Akash, what's the
Absolutely.
plan now?
Absolutely. So we'll have the floor open for questions. So, gentlemen and ladies, you have the React icon in the center. When you click on React, you have an option to raise your hand. If you click on raise your hand, I'll turn on your video. I'll spotlight you. You can ask your questions directly to Stan. But in the interim, I'll pick a few from the chat for you, Stan. Do you convert any leads from Pitchlane? I currently explored this tool and still early and couldn't really tell the result.
We did historically, but not at a rate I would love to convert. And maybe we did something wrong. I think it is a great tool, and there is probably a smart approach you can take with it. But we couldn't invest enough time to test it out in a way I wanted. So we focus on different priorities that actually are consistently bringing results to us.
Awesome. Chris had a question, Stan. Can you recommend the best tool to getting intent signals for technology choices, e.g., headline CMS?
So there isn't one tool for that. Like when I say intent signal, like I'm not referring to like tools like Bombora or all of these tools that will say like these companies are researching your category. You have to think of that in like you have to think of what triggers your prospects. Like our prospects, I know funding triggers them. I know new hire triggers them. I know headcount growth triggers them. I know if they're hiring in a sales department, that triggers them as well. So we identify these triggers, I would say, manually, and then we use basically scrapers like Apify or Browse.ai or all of these scrapers to basically scrape the data, aggregate that data into Clay, and then use a combination of Apollo and Clay to get the highest quality data.
Awesome. And before we spotlight, one last question is Ramzan had a question. How many sequences we should use to get a reply, and what is the best interval between follow-ups? You did mention you're using 3 to 4, Stan. In terms of the time interval between each of these, do you have an idea?
Usually, first follow-up for us is after 2 days, then 3 days, and then like 5 days. That's at least what we normally do. That doesn't mean there is no like it's not universal. Test out different approaches, but don't email people every other day. So make some pause in between. I think that people get annoyed when they get email after email, day after day.
Absolutely. I hope that answered your question, Ramzan. Allah's raised his hand. Let me quickly spotlight him. Can you unmute yourself, sir? There you go.
For sure. Yo, Stan, this was a great session, man. I really appreciate everything you've shared
Thanks.
today.
Thanks a
So
lot,
my
man.
question is more around revenue impact. When you're having meetings and you're talking about pipeline velocity, how are you explaining that in such a way that's very easy and simple for maybe a stakeholder who's not used to the revenue aspect of the business, but they have decision-making power? How are you explaining that in a simplistic way?
That is a great question. So our approach is, before explaining anything, I try to ask them like realistically what are their goals. Sometimes they will know, sometimes they will not know. But if they have some idea, at least like what are the revenue numbers, we try to work backwards from their goal. I never try to spray and pray in a sense. I try to work backwards from that goal. The way I explain it is like, based on the number of meetings we book, tell me what is your average deal size. They tell me the average deal size, and I tell them like, this is what we think we can generate in terms of the velocity. Now tell me what is the average close rate of your team. They will say something around 50% because they only have inbound. Then I, put it down to maybe 20% because this is outbound, and then I can kind of tell them maybe this is a good fit for you or this isn't a good fit for you in a sense. So I try to explain it in a very simple way, but I always ask a few follow-up questions before I explain anything just to get a better picture of, what is their sales team about and how defined their goals are.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how do you factor in their sales cycle with that as well?
Yeah, that is a great question. It's also a question we ask in throughout the discovery. So, for example, we have a client that is in life sciences. It's a software for life sciences. Their timeline sales cycle is basically like 6 months. So we have to factor that in, and we factor that in like we try to be transparent upfront about it to say, okay, we can impact the velocity of pipeline, but then you do understand that after that, it depends on your sales cycle. And most people, sales leaders or founders will say, yeah, of course, we understand that. And then ideally that opens the door for you to sign a 6 or 12-month contract if the sales cycle is longer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Allah. Any other questions? If yes, please raise your hand and I'll quickly spotlight you guys. In the meanwhile, picking one from the chat for you, Stan. I'm struggling with the deliverability on scale. Would adding various personal accounts to my sequences and manually replying to those affect deliverability, or would it be no difference from warm-up?
Sorry, I'm reading the questions again.
Right.
Personal accounts to my sequences, manual replying to this affect deliverability. Well, warm-up is an automated, like I would suggest using warm-up. Like when you do it manually, you're never going to be able to hit that velocity. I don't think it's a time well spent. Smartlead has an outstanding warm-up pool. There's absolutely no reason to do that manually. I think better spend that time on building high-quality lists and then let Smartlead do the warm-up.
Awesome. And one from Nat. In your experience, are there situations where ads just aren't the best choice? Maybe the client doesn't have a strong profile, there's not enough content on their page, or other reasons you'd suggest skipping ads?
Definitely, yes. That's a factor that has a big influence. Like your LinkedIn profile, in this case, your LinkedIn profile is your landing page. Like if you open a LinkedIn profile, I'm gonna call out one person here, like for example, Adam Robinson, our B2B guy. When you open his LinkedIn profile, he shares his value proposition 3 spots the moment you open the profile. That's a well-optimized profile. So if the profile isn't as optimized, then we firstly optimize the profile. We have to help them create some content and kickstart it, which is a bit more work, and then start building the audience there as well. Because if they don't have a network big enough with ads, obviously you can reach different audience that is outside of their network, but it does impact like how their profile is optimized, how well established they are in the space. It definitely impacts that, and sometimes it is not the best choice. So you have to kind of think of some different way.
Awesome. That's all we have on chat. People, if there's any other questions, last call out to raise your hands. If there's nothing, we'll perhaps call it a day. Any other questions? I think we're all good, Stan. This was super helpful. This was gold. And reading through the comments, a lot of us are waiting for the video to be pushed out to go through this again. But thank you so much for this, Stan. And thank you so much for joining in as well, people, because you'll be getting an email with the templates we discussed. And also at the same time, 10 lucky winners would get a free smart server. But Stan, if you have anything to add, please go for it, sir.
No, that's all. Thanks everyone for sticking around until the end. I hope it had some value. Let's connect on LinkedIn if you have any questions. I'm around. Always happy to answer any questions. So that's it. And thanks one more time to Smartlead team. This is great.
100%. We'll see you on the next one, sir. Until then, thank you so much for taking the time, people. Thank you so much, Stan. 3 consistent things in life: death, taxes, and office hours every Thursday. See you all on the next one. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.